Morning, thanks for having me. The great thing about going third is all the really smart stuff's already been said, so this hopefully should be brief. I want to talk a little bit about what we do as an investor, how that's relevant to you. I will touch on how we see the publishing industry, but probably focus a little bit more on our perspective on where we invest, how we invest, and how you guys might engage with fast, young, innovative companies. 3 logos there, hopefully some of them are familiar. I sit on the board of all 3 of these. They're all related to publishing in some way or form. Capto Phi is a leader in search retargeting, so taking search data from publishers, using that to place better ads. Quill is a leader, you'll hear the word leader many times, a leader in primary content creation for both publishers, retailers, and other businesses. And Infinity, which is our latest addition to the portfolio, is a call tracking provider, so allowing both publishers and retailers to understand where inbound call traffic is completing the loop where calls are involved. So this is slightly preaching to the converted, I'm sure, but over the long term, we've seen time and time again, as I think Jeremy had in one of his slides, that ad spend, or engagement, if you like, has always followed where people are spending their time, and that's both on a macro and a micro level. So it's not just the medium that people are using, but also the sites that they're attending. This, I was pleased to see, looks somewhat familiar to what Toby was talking about. From our perspective, it is all about data. It's data because that seems to be the glue that stitches everything together, because that's what helps publishers improve their own experience on site, and we heard a lot about that just recently, but it also helps to improve the yield from advertising because you have far better quality of data going outbound, and you can also sell that data. Nothing to do with your own site, but that data is an asset that is extremely valuable in of its own right, and therefore, what do we see lots of? We see many businesses that are either helping to exploit that data, so I'd put Capto Phi in that bucket, or businesses that are trying to help publishers or retailers themselves do a better job at collecting the data and getting to know their own users. I think what's critical here is, I think we covered a little bit earlier, it's not just about name, address, date of birth, it's about what are these customers doing, what do we learn from their behavior on your site or portfolio of sites that can help drive value to yourselves or value to third parties. How can you add third-party data to your own data to build an even more valuable set of information to engage with your own customers, to personalize, as we were talking about before, or potentially to sell that entire data set onwards to someone else to allow them to do the same thing? I'm going to touch a little bit on Capto Phi. You'll see the only good-looking slides in this presentation are from Capto Phi, because they're a media business. What are they doing? They're buying search terms from publishers, and they are using that to create insights. At the moment, that insight generation has been very focused on the brand side. Where's the future for Capto Phi? It's pushing that insights back to the publishers themselves, so that they can help not only provide a monetization strategy for the publishers, but also to help you understand your own audiences and what they're doing. So here we've got an example that they were doing for BMW. You see here that most of the searches for BMW are positive. They're related to petrol, apologies to the US presentation, hence gas. They're to do with speed. They circle around a lot of other premium brands, as you'd expect. If you go down the funnel and say, okay, well, if that's what people are searching for when they use the brand term BMW, what are the actions they then take, and how are they related to things that they were also interested in, so the converters. So in this case, this is people booking a test drive. Who were they? They were the young and the older. What else were they interested in? They were interested in life change events, so unsurprisingly, a new house, a new car, a new family. So last slide pilfered from Capto Phi, take it from a more of an external perspective, from BMW's perspective, what other brands were they looking at the same time? How did those other brands look in comparison to BMW? But flip this on its head and imagine what this would look like if it was your website compared to your competitors' websites. Wouldn't it be interesting to understand why do consumers engage with your brand, as in your content brand, as opposed to competitors' content brands? Understand where you're getting engagement, where you're not getting engagement, where those strong pools of untapped interest are, potentially where your competitors are doing a better job at tapping those pools of interest in comparison to you. So I wanted to touch a little bit on marketing tech, which is an area that we probably spend more time on, if I'm honest, than ad tech. And it's probably an area that is a little bit further away from publishing. Toby started to lead a little bit earlier. There's clearly a convergence going on here. But why MarTech in of itself? Businesses want to know who their customers are and treat them as an individual to better serve their needs. That retaining and reactivating existing customers is much cheaper and easier than finding new ones from the top of the funnel. And customers expect this, even if they think they don't. And this is a really interesting area for me. It's something we spend a lot of time talking about. I know you're going to talk about ad blocking a little bit later. People want privacy, they want ad blocking, but at the same time, they want this personalized experience and they want everything made just for them. They want it to appear and log in automatically and be seamless and turn up with the products that they used to buy and have suggestions for products they may want to buy and have interesting content for them. But at the same time, they want no one to know anything about them. It's a confusing space, I think. But nonetheless, I think I know which side I would bet on winning. And this is what I wanted to spend some more time. This is sort of the crux of what I find really interesting going on at the moment. AdTech and MarTech are converging. And there's some really good reasons why AdTech and MarTech are converging. Traditionally, these have been completely separate silos. Advertising, big budget for print media, deals with publishers. Marketing, if you like, dealt with the existing customer base. It was mail shots, it was maybe a loyalty card. Now everything is going digital. Publishers are playing on both sides of the fence. Retailers are playing on both sides of the fence. Those two disciplines are starting to converge. And what does this mean for publishers? It means that their data is even more valuable than ever before. Because if you have a user that's engaging with your site that also happens to be a high-value customer of, say, British Airways, there's some hugely powerful things that you can do in collaboration with each other. And understanding where the crossovers are between your customer base and other people's customer base and how to reactivate them is a powerful place to play. So I like this. And I think this is probably where we spend a lot of time thinking about, is that everyone wants technology, but everyone wants technology that works. We spend our time backing, I guess in the context of businesses in this room, very young businesses with a turnover of, say, £1 million. So they're nascent, they're not startups, they've gone beyond an idea on a piece of paper, but they're certainly not fully fledged and mature businesses. And so what we spend our time thinking about is how do we find the best ones to invest in? How do we make a commercial return from that? But I wanted to flip that on its head a little bit for today and think through, from a publisher's perspective, what are the opportunities to get access to all this new innovative technology? And what are the pros and cons of some of those different pieces? So the four key things I think of were investing in technology, building your own technology, buying in technology, and partnering with young and innovative companies. So why is investing difficult? There are lots of people doing corporate venture capital well. In fact, there are probably more people doing corporate venture capital now than at any time since the dot-com boom. You can decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. But the really tricky thing about early stage venture capital is the monster graph. It's quite easy to get something in the tail, it's very difficult to find things in the head. And whatever very smart investors tell you, there's as much luck as there is judgment in getting the things in the head. And so what do experienced investors do? They build a large portfolio, especially if they're going early and especially if they're going high risk. And what does that mean? It means you're more likely, over a balanced portfolio, to get some at the head, lots in the tail, but overall make a good return. And what's the problem for that we see with corporates a lot is they get really excited about investing in something, but they neither have the bandwidth nor the capacity to really build a proper sized portfolio. And therefore, almost by definition, their returns are likely to be poor from a financial perspective. And corporates haven't quite considered that the whole point of this exercise was to bring innovative technology in-house and to be able to leverage it within their own business, not just to make a financial investment. And sometimes there's a disconnect there as well, that in order to pursue what I would see as a very successful corporate venture capital program, you need scale, you need discipline, and you need a proper resource to make sure that that technology is really well deployed within the business and there is strategic value to the investments you're making. Okay, so what about building? Building is tough. Building requires you to have the internal needs, easy to understand, but how do you keep up with the cutting edge? All the things that Jeremy were talking about, how do you build a team internally that are going to be on top of those things all the time? Is it really your business to be understanding the cutting edge, or is it your business to be building what's already more in the mainstream, not the stuff that's 3 to 5 years out? And how do you stop the critical, what the business needs tomorrow, from blocking out the really innovative? Buying, acquiring these great technology businesses that are out there. Well, there's a big problem here. The best businesses only want to be purchased at very premium prices. And that's a challenge to really justify the valuation of some of these businesses. And even if you could justify the valuation and you could acquire the business successfully, can you really maintain the pace of innovation once you've bought it in-house? Or do you find that what you've bought becomes old hat over a period of 3 to 5 years? Bad businesses, and there are many out there, and I use this term very broadly, often have great technology. That just means they've built something very valuable from a technological perspective, but actually it's got no proper commercial traction. That might make an ideal acquisition or acqui-hire, the idea of just bringing the team on board into the broader tech environment. But how do you find them? How do you manage them once they're in? It's definitely complex. Partnering. This is, I think I'd say broadly, the area that sitting on the other side of the table, sitting on the board of small companies, trying to do deals with big companies, something that is overlooked and undervalued by the bigger companies. It can be very symbiotic working between the two sides. Small companies need reference customers. They really want a logo on their page to say, we work with these people, they think we're great, you should also work with us. They're critical for them breaking out and moving onwards. And the corporates get really great access to cutting-edge innovation. But startups aren't corporates, and this is a classic mistake. Often, corporates want to deal with a startup, but they treat them like they're any other size company. They put them through procurement, they expect strong balance sheets, they expect security of cash flow, they take ages to pay them. That doesn't work for a startup. There is a vested interest on both sides of making sure that that relationship works. For example, you see corporates who try to leverage the relationship very strongly to make startups become effectively a bespoke in-house or out-house IT development industry for them. They're trying to form the product so it's solely for them. That's not going to work in the long term. Yes, it's brilliant to be able to leverage that relationship to be able to get what you want out of the product. But if you turn the startup that you're working with into a development house, ultimately that startup will fail, and that's in neither side's best interests. But it is in everyone's interest to share the value created between them. You can create guaranteed or reduced prices. You can take warrants or options in the business so you have some sort of equity upside if these startups succeed. You can create some custom development, as I said. You do have to be comfortable with the concept that you're helping create product that your competitors might go and use. How do you think about the challenges of that internally? But I think that partnering with small, fast-growing companies is a brilliant way to stay up to speed with all the things that Jeremy was talking about, that we talked about, that exists within platforms. So as a closing thought, staying close to and being willing to take the risk on these novel technologies will be increasingly important to everyone. It doesn't mean owning them. It doesn't mean being completely unique, but it does mean being adventurous and taking a risk. Thank you very much, and good luck partnering.